The smell of my burned daughter's teddy bear still clung to my robes when Constance Whitmore walked into my courtroom like she owned it. That same psychotic smile. The one she'd worn while poisoning my dead wife's roses with bleach. The one she'd flashed while stealing $89,000 from our neighbors. The one she'd probably had when she watched my house and everything I had left of my family burned to ash. But this HOA terrorist made one fatal error. She never bothered learning who she was destroying. I'm not just some random single dad she could bully into submission. I'm Federal Judge Thaddeus Morrison. And she just committed arson against the one man in this district with the legal power to annihilate her existence. 18 months of psychological warfare. One moment of beautiful reckoning. She thought burning my house would silence me. Instead, she just handed me the match to torch her entire criminal empire. But let me back up and tell you how a respected federal prosecutor ended up watching his neighborhood terrorist face federal charges. 2 years ago, life was near perfect. I'm Thaddeus Morrison, Thad to friends. 15 years as a federal prosecutor who'd put away everyone from cartel bosses to corrupt senators. My 12-year-old daughter Zara and I lived in our modest craftsman house in Willowbrook Heights, where the biggest crime was Mrs. Lucy's cat stealing newspapers. The house wasn't much. Faded blue siding, white trim that Sarah, my late wife, had painted while pregnant. But it was everything. The morning coffee still tasted better in Sarah's favorite mug. Zara's laugh still echoed from the tire swing I'd hung the day we moved in. Even 3 years after cancer took Sarah, every creaking floorboard held memories I wasn't ready to let go. I was the neighborhood's unofficial good guy. Perfect lawn, always helped elderly Mrs. Lucy with her groceries, coached Zara's Little League team. Willowbrook Heights was paradise for people like us, young families, retirees, single parents trying to give their kids stability. Then the devil moved in next door. Constance Whitmore arrived 18 months ago in a white Escalade that screamed, "I need everyone to know I have money." Designer everything, hair that probably cost more than most people's rent, and eyes like a great white shark, cold, dead, and constantly calculating. Her husband worked overseas, oil money, always traveling. That meant Constance had unlimited time to make everyone else's life hell. Within 72 hours, she'd printed business cards calling herself HOA Compliance Coordinator, a title that didn't even exist in our neighborhood's nearly dead housing agreement. See, Willowbrook Heights technically had an HOA, but it was a ghost, formed in 1987, never incorporated, never held a meeting since Bush Sr. We liked it that way. Live and let live. But Constance saw opportunity, the way vultures spot roadkill. She started prowling the streets with a clipboard, that cheap vanilla perfume trailing behind her like toxic smoke, taking photos, measuring lawns, interrogating neighbors about aesthetic standards. The click-clack of her designer heels became the soundtrack of doom. Her first target was my mailbox, vintage cast iron with hand-painted numbers Sarah had done during one of her nesting phases. It was one of the last things she'd touched before Zara was born. Constance declared it non-compliant with neighborhood standards and demanded I replace it within 48 hours or face $50 daily fines. I'm a federal prosecutor. I can smell fraud from 3 counties away. Quick county record search confirmed what I suspected. Our HOA had zero legal authority to enforce anything. Better yet, federal employees have protections against discriminatory housing enforcement. Harassing a federal employee over fake HOA rules isn't just annoying, it's a civil rights violation punishable by jail time. So I drafted a polite but firm letter explaining why Constance could take her fake fines and shove them where her fake smile couldn't reach. I thought that would end it. Instead, it started a war that would cost me everything I loved. Her response arrived exactly 72 hours later, and it wasn't an apology. At 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, I woke to the sound of my sprinkler system running full blast. Weird. Since I'd winterized it weeks ago, I stumbled outside in my bathrobe, expecting a leak. What I found stopped me cold. Constance standing in Sarah's memorial rose garden with a spray bottle, systematically murdering every bush my wife had planted. "Morning, Thad," she chirped, as if committing botanical genocide was neighborly. "Just helping with your little pest problem." The chemical smell hit like a punch, sharp, acrid, industrial strength. Then I saw the label herbicide, the kind that could kill a redwood tree. "What the hell are you doing?" "Well, since you clearly can't maintain your property to neighborhood standards, I'm solving the bee problem these roses create." That shark smile widened. "We can't have dangerous insects threatening our children, can we?" My hands trembled, not from cold, but rage. Those roses weren't just plants. They were Sarah's heartbeat still pulsing in the soil, delicate red climbers she'd babied through brutal Michigan winters, pruning them with her grandmother's antique scissors. Before she died, Sarah had made me swear to keep them alive. "There's no bee problem," I said through clenched teeth. "Oh, but there is." Constance lied easily. "Mrs. Peterson's granddaughter is severely allergic. One sting could kill her. I filed a complaint with County Health." Pure fiction. Mrs. Peterson was 87 and hadn't had visitors in years. But truth meant nothing to a sociopath drunk on imaginary power. "Stop. You're trespassing and destroying private property. Leave now or I'm calling the police." Constance laughed, a sound sharp enough to crack glass. "Oh, honey, you don't understand how this works. I'm protecting our community from your negligence." She finished executing Sarah's roses, packed up her spray bottle and strutted back to her sterile lawn like she'd done a good deed. That night, as I watched the roses curl and blacken under the moonlight, I made my first strategic move. I installed 6 security cameras, night vision, motion sensors, cloud backup. Predators like her always escalate. I was right. 72 hours later, my phone buzzed with motion alerts. There was Constance, dressed head to toe in black, creeping through my yard with bleach and a stack of official-looking papers. The footage was crystal clear, her pouring bleach on the roots, planting fake HOA notices under rocks. But she made one fatal mistake. She forged Mrs. Lucy's signature. Mrs. Lucy, who couldn't even write English beyond her own name. I had her. Video, motive, intent, all slam-dunk evidence. The next morning, I walked into the police station with my evidence folder, ready to end this nightmare. That's when I learned just how deep her poison ran. Sergeant Rick Bellows didn't even open the folder. "Look, Mr. Morrison," he said, sliding it back like it contained anthrax. "Mrs. Whitmore is a pillar of this community. Maybe you're just having trouble coping since your wife passed. Grief does strange things." The metallic taste of rage filled my mouth. I realized then, Constance hadn't just poisoned my roses. She'd already poisoned the entire system against me. 3 weeks after Constance murdered my wife's roses, she turned her venom on my family. It started with something small, my sister's old Honda Civic. Rebecca had driven 12 hours from Portland for Zara's 12th birthday. Her car looked like it had survived 3 apocalypses, but it ran fine. That night, we stayed up late in the garage assembling Zara's birthday bike. The sharp smell of machine oil mixed with Rebecca's lavender perfume, while she told stories that made Zara laugh until she hiccuped. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. At 6:15 the next morning, pounding on the front door jolted me awake. Zara screamed from the window, "Daddy! There's a scary truck stealing Aunt Becca's car." I sprinted outside barefoot, heart slamming against my ribs, to find a tow truck already dragging Rebecca's Honda up its ramp. The driver, a linebacker-sized man with prison tattoos, didn't even look at me. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Quote, "Vehicle violation, buddy. No overnight guest parking," he grunted, shoving a grease-stained slip toward me. $9.35 cash to get it back. "Guest parking violation? Who made that rule?" That's when Constance appeared from behind the truck, pristine as ever in her designer athleisure, clipboard in hand. "Morning, Thad. Terribly sorry about the confusion. New overnight guest parking restrictions. Notices went out Friday." I snatched the glossy flyer. Fake logo, fabricated rules, professional printing. And somehow, She'd reclassified my sister's dented Honda as a commercial vehicle. "This is harassment," I snapped. She smiled sweetly. "Community standards must be maintained. Extended guest parking affects property values. Surely you, of all people, understand accountability." The tow truck roared off with my sister's only car while Constance turned on her heel and strutted away like a queen returning to her throne. That afternoon, Rebecca paid nearly $1,000 in cash at a grimy tow lot. The logo painted across the office door made my stomach drop. Bellows Recovery Services, the same last name as the cop who refused my evidence. By that evening, my anger had sharpened into surgical focus. I was done playing defense. Years as a prosecutor had taught me how to dismantle corruption, one paper trail at a time. At the county clerk's office, I pulled every public record tied to Willowbrook Heights. I found exactly what I expected. The HOA was never legally incorporated. No charter, no tax ID, no authority to fine anyone. The neighborhood had operated on goodwill for decades until Constance saw a gold mine. Then I dug deeper and discovered the real crime. 47 official violations filed with the county in the past 18 months, all signed by Constance Whitmore. Every single one targeted single parents, elderly residents, or minorities. Cross-referencing property records and business licenses revealed the smoking gun. Bellows Recovery Services was owned by Sergeant Rick Bellows's brother, Richard, a convicted fraudster with a suspended towing license. It was a perfect triangle of corruption. Constance fabricated violations, Rick dismissed complaints, and Richard cashed in through illegal towing. Suburban extortion disguised as HOA enforcement. I was building the case of a lifetime, my own personal crusade. But before I could act, she came for my daughter. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in court prosecuting a wire fraud case. When I finally checked my phone, 12 missed calls from Zara's school filled the screen. My heart stopped. "Mr. Morrison," the voicemail said, the principal's voice trembling. "Zara's having a panic attack. She says strangers are in your house with cameras." I abandoned my case mid-trial and tore down suburban streets like a madman. Every worst scenario flashed through my mind. Break-in, assault, kidnapping. I found Zara in the nurse's office, face pale, clutching her inhaler. "There were men in the house, Daddy," she sobbed. "They said they were inspectors. They wouldn't leave. They took pictures of my room. When I drove her home, the air smelled wrong. Cigarette smoke, cheap aftershave, evidence of intruders who'd rifled through our drawers. And on the couch, I found a business card. Morrison Property Assessments, LLC. My name, my house, a fake company. A quick search revealed it was registered that very morning to a vacant lot, and its so-called inspector was Derek Whitmore, Constance's unemployed cousin, with 3 DUIs and a meth record. The realization hit like ice water. She'd used my name to terrorize my child, planting evidence to make it look legitimate. That night, I filed for an emergency restraining order. The judge, Patricia Hernandez, who had known Sarah, granted it immediately. 6 months of mandatory distance, with automatic arrest if Constance came near. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of relief. That lasted exactly 14 hours. The next morning, Constance stood on my porch, chatting with 2 cops, like she was hosting a coffee social. When she saw me through the window, she waved. Sergeant Rick Bellows turned toward me with an apologetic look. "Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Whitmore says you threatened her life yesterday." "What?" Quote, "She claims you told her you'd bury her so deep even God couldn't find the body. We're required to take that seriously." I was speechless. "Check the restraining order I filed. Yesterday. She's lying." Rick sighed. "About that, she filed her own restraining order this morning. Says you've been stalking her, taking photos, following her to church. 2 restraining orders, each claiming the other party was dangerous. A legal stalemate she could hide behind for months. But this time, she overplayed her hand. Filing false reports against a federal prosecutor is a federal crime." That night, after putting Zara to bed, I called in a favor. Marcus Webb, my old law school roommate, now one of the FBI's top financial crimes investigators. "Marcus, It's Thad. I need a deep financial dive on a woman named Constance Whitmore. Jesus, Thad, what's going on? She thinks she's untouchable. Let's find out how wrong she is. 48 hours later, Marcus called back. Buddy, your suburban nightmare is broke. Catastrophically broke. He walked me through the findings. $89,000 in back taxes. Husband laid off months ago. Escalade 3 payments from repo. 17 maxed out credit cards. But the kicker? She'd been collecting HOA assessment payments for 18 months. $340,000 from neighbors into a personal account. There's no HOA fund, Thad, Marcus said. She's pocketing every cent. Wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion. It's a gold mine of felonies. The picture snapped into focus. Her fake fines, her intimidation, her fake authority. It was all a money pipeline. She was stealing from families too scared to fight back. That night, something inside me hardened. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was justice. Within a week, I'd assembled a coalition that would terrify any criminal. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, IRS forensic accountants, DOJ civil rights lawyers. Each agency smelled blood. By Saturday, I was knocking on doors with a mission. Mrs. Lucy, trembling behind her screen door, whispered. She said if I don't pay, she'll call immigration on my grandson. Quote, a retired grandmother bullied by a fake HOA queen. I told her the truth. Mrs. Lucy, that woman's going to prison. By Sunday evening, I'd visited 17 homes. Families who'd been terrorized for months, handing over proof of payments they never owed. Every tearful story fueled the fire in my gut. Constance thought she was untouchable. She had no idea the FBI, IRS, and DOJ were already watching her every move, and they were just waiting for her to light the final match. 3 weeks into the federal investigation, Constance must have sensed the walls closing in. Her harassment escalated beyond fake fines and intimidation into something far darker. It started quietly. My front door left ajar when I came home from court one evening. The faint smell of cigarette smoke drifted from inside. Years of prosecuting criminals told me this wasn't a mistake. I called for backup before stepping inside, my pulse pounding. Drawers dumped, papers scattered, furniture overturned. But this wasn't a robbery. Nothing valuable was missing. Instead, someone had staged a scene meant to look like corruption. On the kitchen table sat a manila envelope labeled Evidence of Judicial Misconduct. Inside, forged bank statements, doctored emails, even a fake letter on official letterhead accusing me of taking bribes. It was professional, too professional for Constance's limited intelligence. She had help, but she'd slipped up. The letter was dated for a day I'd been in Washington, D.C., testifying before Congress, recorded on live TV. And the phrasing was wrong, filled with legal terms no real prosecutor would use. More importantly, the FBI's hidden cameras caught Derek Whitmore, Constance's cousin, breaking into my home while she directed him through a Bluetooth headset. Her voice, calm and cold, came through the recording. Leave the envelope on the table. Make sure you get his fingerprints on something. She was setting me up for a fall. But in doing so, she handed me everything I needed to destroy her. The next morning, the local news ran a headline that made my stomach drop. Federal judge under investigation for corruption. Someone had leaked the fake documents to the press. Reporters quoted concerned neighbors describing my unstable behavior. Constance's strategy was complete. Ruin my name, trigger Child Protective Services, take Zara away, and silence me forever. Sure enough, that afternoon, CPS arrived at my door. The investigator, a weary woman named Janet Mills, saw the setup immediately. Mr. Morrison, I've seen plenty of false reports. This one's as obvious as they come, she said after checking the house. Your daughter's fine. Your home's spotless. But whoever filed this isn't going to stop until she gets what she wants. That night, as Zara slept beside me, too scared to be alone, I stared at the photos from our surveillance team. Constance meeting Derek. Constance handing over envelopes. Constance, cigarette in hand, smiling as if the world were her stage. Agent Rebecca Torres from the FBI called around midnight. "We've got enough for mail fraud and wire fraud," she said. "But something tells me she's not done. Be careful, Thad." I knew she was right. People like Constance never surrender quietly. The fire came 5 days later. I was in court, mid-prosecution, when my phone started vibrating nonstop, multiple missed calls. Then a text from a neighbor. "Thad, your house is on fire." I ran out of the courtroom before anyone could stop me. By the time I reached Maple Street, smoke billowed into the gray Michigan sky. Fire trucks blocked the road, hoses snaking across lawns. The smell hit first. Burned insulation, gasoline, and something worse. Mrs. Lucy stood across the street, clutching Zara, both covered in soot. Zara's eyes were wide with shock, her small voice breaking. "Daddy, our house is gone." Fire Marshal Davidson met me at the tape line, his jaw tight. "Accelerant in the basement, timer devices, we're calling ATF. This wasn't an accident." My knees went weak. Everything Sarah had touched, our photos, her jewelry, Zara's childhood toys, gone. But what Constance didn't know was that her cousin Derek had already been under full federal surveillance. By nightfall, the evidence started pouring in. Security cameras from Mrs. Lucy's porch caught Derek walking into my basement carrying a duffel bag. His fingerprints were on the fuel cans found at the scene. He'd even used his own credit card to buy timer devices from Home Depot the day before. ATF agents picked him up within hours. Under interrogation, he broke almost instantly. "Constance said you were ruining her life," he sobbed. "She promised me 10 grand if I burned the house down. Said you deserved it." Federal agents played Constance's recorded call from earlier that day. Her voice was sharp, controlled. "Make sure you use enough accelerant to destroy everything. Start in the basement. He keeps his files there. If something happens to him or that kid, that's on them for not minding their business." That one sentence sealed her fate. Arson, attempted murder, domestic terrorism against a federal employee. By midnight, Constance Whitmore was in handcuffs. The HOA queen of Willowbrook Heights was reduced to a sobbing mess as agents led her out in front of her stunned neighbors. Even then, she tried to talk her way out of it, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. But no amount of fake charm could erase the evidence. 6 months later, her trial became a national sensation. HOA Karen faces federal arson charges blared across every major news channel. I recused myself, of course, but I sat in the gallery, surrounded by the very neighbors she had tormented. Mrs. Lucy sat proudly in the front row. Families once too afraid to speak now filled the courtroom, ready to see justice. Constance shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her once perfect hair a tangled mess. She scanned the room until her gaze met mine. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The prosecution, handled by my colleague Amanda Walsh, was flawless. They played the recordings, showed the videos, presented the financial records. Every lie, every threat, every stolen dollar laid bare under courtroom lights. Then came the moment that broke her composure. The jury heard her own voice. Even if someone gets hurt, they brought it on themselves. The room went silent. Even her lawyer's face turned pale. Judge Hernandez leaned forward, eyes like steel. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you have anything to say?" Constance stood, trembling. "Your Honor, I was protecting our neighborhood from someone who thought he was above the rules. I only wanted fairness." That single sentence sealed her fate. She admitted motive, arrogance, and intent, all in one breath. "Mrs. Whitmore," Judge Hernandez said, her tone razor-sharp, "you burned a man's home, terrorized a child, and nearly killed innocent people. You've shown no remorse. I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison, no parole." Applause erupted in the courtroom. Tears rolled down Mrs. Lucy's cheeks. Zara squeezed my hand, whispering, "Mom would be proud." Derek received 8 years for his part, along with supervised release and restitution. Sergeant Bellows and his brother were later convicted of corruption, stripped of their pensions, and sent to prison. 2 years passed. Now, as I sip coffee in the rebuilt kitchen, morning light glows across new walls. The scent of roses drifts through the open window. Sarah's roses, replanted in the memorial garden by the same neighbors who once lived in fear. Zara, now 16, laughs outside as she practices her batting swing. The sound is life returning. The neighborhood rose from the ashes too. We formed a real HOA, transparent, audited, built on trust. Property values soared, but more importantly, so did hope. Families who once hid behind curtains now waved to each other in the mornings. The $473,000 in restitution funded new streetlights, a playground, and a legal defense fund for families facing HOA abuse across America. We call it the Willowbrook Justice Fund. Every year, we host a community festival. Last year, Zara gave a speech to hundreds gathered under the sunset. "These awards," she said, "honor families who never surrendered to bullies. Because the best revenge is building something beautiful where they left ashes." She's right. Evil doesn't win when people stand together. Constance Whitmore now spends her days in a federal prison laundry room, scrubbing uniforms for 23 cents an hour. The woman who once demanded control over every lawn and mailbox now takes orders from inmates who despise bullies like her. And as for me, I finally sleep again. Because every time I see those roses bloom, I'm reminded that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about restoration. We didn't just survive her fire, we built something stronger from the smoke. And if you've ever faced your own HOA nightmare, remember this: bullies thrive on silence. Stand up, speak out, and let them burn in the light of truth.